Manchester United's new head coach, Ruben Amorim, has done a press conference following the win for Sporting last night, where he's revealed some really interesting insights around the ultimatum that he was ultimately given by United to join the club, how he feels about it, what his thoughts are. We're going to run through all of the quotes from our new head coach. Could Viktor Gyökeres be about to follow Amorim to United from Sporting? We've got some updates there. Erik Ten Hag pens an open letter thanking the fans for his support, and BS transfer rumour of the week coming up in a rundown of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, please smash a like on the video and let's jump straight into it. So, a lot of the news obviously going around, unless you've been living under a rock, is regarding the manager situation. So Ruben Amorim's done and obviously it was announced yesterday officially by Man United. Sporting had a game last night, which they won 5-1. I think it was the final score in the end. And then after the match, he's given a post-match press conference where he actually gave some honest answers regarding the situation in United. So let's go through what he said. So Amorim said it's a special week, 2 press releases each time on a match day, but the clubs are now listed companies and have to present all these elements. That's how it is. There are things you can't control. I'm in work mode. So I think he was referencing there the fact that the last time Sporting played midweek, Sporting had to release a statement to say that Man United had activated his release clause, and then obviously United on the day of their game yesterday announced that he was officially our new kind of head coach. So he's kind of saying that ideally, I think he would have wanted to keep that under wraps while he was still in control, but no, nothing you can do about it. It's the world that we live in. He also said, it's the best time of my life at Sporting, but I now have to make my decision and I make them naturally. I understand that their pain, but time heals everything. When asked directly about obviously leaving Sporting, he also said, my only request when United paid the clause was that his departure would happen at the end of the season. And he was told that it was not possible, that it was now or never. I had 3 days to decide on something that completely changes my life. Now, that's really interesting. And I've got a timeline of what kind of happened in regards to Erik Ten Hag sacking and obviously us making a move for Amorim coming up a bit later on. But that's really interesting that he was effectively given an ultimatum to say, no, now it's now or never. And these will be highlighted in some of the kind of following quotes. But what Amorim was effectively saying is that he'd already told Sporting that he wanted that this was going to be his last season regardless. And that, when United came in for him, he'd asked United if they could wait until the end of the season so he could finish out his season at Sporting. But United were like, no, it's now or never. And if you don't make a decision, we're just going to move on to another target, which is really interesting. And then obviously Amorim had that kind of decision to make. And made it within. That's why it's all kind of happened so quickly, because United were like, no, we're not waiting until the end of the season. We want you now, or we're going to move on to somebody else, which is really interesting. And then obviously Amorim made the decision to come, which, is exciting for us. He also said a club, United came forward and knew that if I refused it, it would no longer be possible to go there in 6 months. And I knew that in 6 months, I would no longer be at Sporting. It was the only club I wanted, and that's what motivated me. There was a moment when I had to decide to make a decision, and I did it. So effectively what he was saying is that when United come through, he knew that if he'd said no, he would probably not get the opportunity to come to United again in the future, because obviously we would have moved on to another target, and he still wanted. So effectively what he was saying is, I wanted to leave Sporting anyway in the summer. Ideally, he would have waited and wanted to come to United then, but given the chance, there's not really much he can do given the chance and the ultimatum. Do you know what I mean? Because as he said himself, it's now or never. When it came to United, obviously he's made the decision, and United have kind of pushed for it and give him that kind of, put him in a box almost. Do you know what I mean? To say, right, well, if you don't decide now or don't come now, we're moving on. And obviously Amorim, from his perspective, was like, well, if I don't go now, then this is a once in a lifetime opportunity potentially, and it's too good to refuse, which is really interesting. And then asked him whether he'd spoken to any of the United players. He said, I haven't spoken to anyone. I'm totally focused on the last few games with Sporting, which is fair enough. And he was asked how he gets United back on track he said on the 11th we will have the opportunity to talk about Manchester United for now. I'm at Sporting, so he kind of dodged that question around. He wasn't going into specifics around his job at United because technically he is still Sporting manager for the next few games, so that I respect that. And then he also confirmed that he is taking his staff with us. So he said, I'm taking my staff to United, but we'll have time to talk about it. That's always been one of the conditions. We've been together since Casapia. So Ruben Amorim kind of did confirm that one of his conditions to move clubs was that he wanted his staff to go with him as well. And United have obviously obliged. That's why we paid a little bit more on his release clause. One, to get him out of the 30-day kind of period to the notice period, but then also to bring in all his staff as well, which is really interesting. Still no real update though on what that means for Van Nistelrooy, for those wondering. He also confirmed, I will not take any players from Sporting in January. Now, he didn't say ever, he just said in the January transfer window, and that's really interesting, because it's going to be interesting to see, because how much money are we going to have available in January? Because we know we're on really, really tight PSR kind of restrictions because of the summer. And obviously we've had a big outlay in terms of, sacking Erik Ten Hag. That's going to cost us a bit of money. And then obviously paying Amorim's release clause. Has that come off of the transfer budget? Be interesting to see what we kind of do in the January transfer window, whether there is any funds available. I think some of it might depend on player sales. There are a few potential players that you could look to move on, but a lot of that depends on clubs wanting to buy those players. And is January the time where, where clubs are going to come in and pay sort of big bucks for any of our players? I don't think, in fact, none of our players are really worth any big bucks, to be fair, but you're talking about like fringe players potentially leaving. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this kind of develops, especially with the transfer window in January, and what sort of funds we have left now that we've obviously got rid of Ten Hag and bought an Amorim's going to be interesting to see. But the man himself saying they will not take any Sporting players in January, but didn't rule out any future signings in the summer. And then he also said United, it was an extraordinarily attractive challenge that I couldn't refuse. And I think that's kind of, really interesting kind of quotes from Amorim. One suggesting that it was kind of given an ultimatum, now or never, but then also he just couldn't refuse it, which is fair enough. And then he also said, I wanted to stay to the end of the season, but I was told that it was not possible and it was now or never. I wanted United. So they were the kind of like a summary of what he was effectively saying as well, which is really interesting. You have to let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then he also kind of had a direct message to the fans, to United fans, saying, thank you very much for your support. I will not let you down. That came from Portuguese kind of media. I will not let you down. So again, we're going to have more quotes and interviews and bits like that coming out. He's still technically Sporting's manager until the 11th. So, but really interesting kind of insights there around obviously the ultimatum, the fact that he said he couldn't refuse to come to United, the fact that he was going to leave Sporting anyway. One of the other kind of comments that he came out with was that he'd refused other clubs as well, and that he'd refused more money from other clubs as well, which was really, really interesting, because we know maybe Liverpool were interested in him in the summer, Barcelona potentially were looking at him, West Ham wanted to get him as well. So he's actually kind of confirmed that he's refused bigger money offers from other teams because he wanted United effectively, which is exciting. And then Chris Wheeler said that Ruben Amorim is the first boss since Sir Alex Ferguson left to have the title of head coach rather than manager. So now that Ineos have got all their kind of structure in place, again, it's going to be really kind of intriguing to see how that develops going forward, because, we don't know whether he's got a transfer veto in his contract like previous managers have had. Obviously, I'm going to assume that he's comfortable with the contract that he signed anyway and is not really bothered about that sort of thing. But yeah, obviously, no doubt we'll have some more specifics and some more details over the next few weeks and days, and kind of obviously I'll bring you all the bits regarding that as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And then there was a kind of timeline release. So this came from the Telegraph, so a credible source. saying that Omar Barada sacked Erik ten Hag on Monday morning and then boarded a flight to Lisbon to tell Sporting face-to-face that United wanted their manager Ruben Amorim. So that's pretty kind of ruthless, isn't it, from Barada, to be fair, but efficient. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no point sitting on your hands and saying, okay, well, we've sacked ten Hag, now what do we do? You have to move on. It's a cruel world, and it's a dog-eat-dog world. And the fact that he kind of sacked ten Hag and then flew straight to Sporting Lisbon to try and get Amorim kind of suggests to me two things. One is that he's not going to mess around when it comes to making decisions at United, but then also it must have been in the plans anyway. This is obviously something that they've thought out, and that was kind of widely documented, was that they wanted to give Erik ten Hag time and patience and stuff, but obviously the West Ham result was the final straw, and they moved really fast, efficiently. Like I said, in a week we've kind of got rid of Erik ten Hag and brought in Ruben Amorim. Really, really efficient from Omar Barada. And then the Telegraph were also saying that United already knew Amorim wanted the job, so a negotiation opened over the terms of his departure. Sporting asked for an extra $5 million to release Amorim after the City game. United countered with $1 million to take him immediately. And then he also said that United discreetly established Amorim had a way out of his contract, and he was prepared to join mid-season. After the defeat to West Ham, the decision was made to sack ten Hag the following day. The same day, Amorim told Verades that he wanted permission to speak with United, and then within an hour, Barada called Verades and was in Sporting by Monday evening to meet in person. That's insane, isn't it? That the speed in which United kind of did that. So obviously we lost to West Ham on Sunday. The decision was made that night to kind of sack ten Hag. Monday morning, he gets the boot. Monday evening, Barada's in Sporting, speaking to Amorim or speaking to Sporting's director to say, yeah, we want to pay the release clause and we want him mid-season. So there's clearly some conversations and some bits that have gone on behind the scenes before all of this. I'd imagine after the last international break, when there was all the talk around, United potentially sacking Erik ten Hag there, and they decided to sack him. I think it was the Muppeteers that come out and said, no, what they're going to do is start putting contingency plans in place. So they are going to start looking at alternatives, whether that's interims, whether that's permanent managers. And I would imagine all that stuff's been going on behind the scenes. And then when we ultimately had to make that decision, we got the go ahead from Amorim, and then that was the kind of, the way that it kind of worked out. Do you know what I mean? Erik ten Hag gone, Amorim in. But really interesting insights. I kind of find that really I like knowing the inner workings around how these sort of things work and what's happened. So really kind of interesting to kind of summarize from Ruben Amorim himself. What he's kind of said was that effectively from his perspective, he already told Sporting that this was going to be his last season. And then United came in, or in fact, he refused other clubs before United. But then United came in and said, right, okay, we want you. And he still wanted to stay at Sporting for this season and said, can we not do it in the summer after the season? Because he obviously didn't want to let Sporting down. And, he's halfway through a season. And United gave him the ultimatum to say, no, it's now or never. If you don't decide now, we're going to move on to other targets. And then Amorim was like, well, shit, if I don't come now, then it might not be possible for me to ever go back to United. And clearly going off of the, reading between the lines as well from what he was saying, I think he was waiting for the United job. I think that this is a job that he's kind of thought in his head, and why would you not, to be fair, but maybe kind of thought, well, that's the job that I kind of want. And he does seem to be the sort of character where he likes that kind of that role where a club's on the floor and at its kind of lowest ebb to rebuild it back. So hopefully that's a good sign. It's just, I heard this before and I just want to kind of, I need to see it in action this time. This is because we've always been told for the last, God knows how long, 10 years, it's a rebuild, and, and the whole kind of cycle repeats. But I do hope that we this time we've kind of hit the nail on the head, and that we can back the manager. And it'll be interesting to see with him being a head coach, how backed he would be in the transfer market, because obviously there's players in the squad. I know some of you will mention them in the comments. Do you know what I mean? That we know might be problematic for a manager coming in because they've got history of playing under previous managers or not playing under previous managers in some cases. And it'll be interesting to see how the club kind of back that, because if he doesn't have a transfer veto and he's a head coach, who's going to be responsible for not just bringing players in? Because I do trust Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox. We've got Christopher Vavell, who's our kind of head of recruitment, who's got a really good track record of bringing in talented players. So I do trust them. It's just who's making the decision on which players to sell. That's the kind of key issue, because, you know, like, who's going to decide which player fits the system. And I think that was one of the kind of reasons why they were so kind of upset with Ten Hag, because there was no style of play, and we were changing tactics all the time for those recruiters to say, well, I don't know which players to look for because I don't know what system we're going to play. And Amorim, to his credit, is a system manager. He will play a specific system, and that way you can then kind of judge it properly, where you can say, okay, well, this player does not fit the system regardless of who it is, so what's the point in keeping them? We might as well move them on and try and get somebody else in. And that's how I think United kind of want to do it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of develops. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then there's been a few transfer rumours. So following the appointment of Ruben Amorim, sources believe Manchester United will join the race for Sporting striker Viktor Gyökeres soon. He can leave Sporting next summer for 60 to 70 million euros. Although they have not made a move yet, Ruben Amorim's appointment means Manchester United may get involved in the race for Viktor Gyökeres. City, Arsenal, Liverpool and Chelsea are all interested. That came from Florian Plettenberg regarding Viktor Gyökeres, but obviously Amorim's just said he's not going to be signing any players from Sporting in January. That does not mean, though, that they won't potentially look to bring in players in the summer. And I've mentioned this on yesterday's video. Going to need to be careful. We are going to get heavily linked now to a lot of Sporting players for two reasons. One, obviously Amorim coming in, but also secondly, we have been linked with a lot of Sporting players in the past anyway. So we do need to be kind of careful. But Viktor Gyökeres is definitely a striker that I would love at United. I think he's you know, he's on absolute fire at the moment playing under Amorim. The player himself, though, when speaking about Amorim, said, "We are sad that he is leaving. He has done an extraordinary job here. We wish him all the best. To follow him to United, I don't know. I am here. I like it here. I don't think about it." So Gyökeres himself remaining kind of coy on his futures. But again, I don't think it's a January deal. That one anyway. That would be definitely one for the summer if we were going to look to go for Viktor Gyökeres, but I definitely would. I think it'd be an outstanding striker to kind of bring in. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then another player that we're heavily linked with is Alvaro Fernandez. Dean Jones has said Manchester United have refused to rule out the possibility of offering Benfica left-back Alvaro Carreras a route back to the club, and they could take advantage of their buyback clause. Ruben Amorim has been watching his performance at close quarters. Dean Jones not the most credible, but we do know that that's a player that we've been, well, obviously we sold, but then so we know a lot about him, but also monitoring, and we have that buyback clause as well. So definitely one I would say keep an eye on the Alvaro kind of transfer. And then are you ready for the bullshit transfer story of the week? So Manchester United are tracking Vinicius Jr.'s situation at Real Madrid in case he becomes available. That's come from Spanish outlet. I actually think they're fairly decent. I don't know the credibility myself, but they've got like very large following on Twitter. And United Report were like an aggregator account as well. They were the ones that kind of posted it. So they're normally quite decent at kind of, you know, putting through fairly reliable kind of sources. But there's absolutely no chance United are going for Vinicius Jr. So for me personally, I would file that story straight in the BS bin. But you know, it is what it is. You can let me know what you think about that one in the comments. There's no chance we're getting Vinicius Jr. It costs an absolute fortune, not just in transfer fee, but in wages and stuff. And that's not the direction of travel that United want to go down. So that one for me is, yeah, it's one of those. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then finally, Erik Ten Hag has posted, I actually thought quite a kind of classy letter to the fans. I'm not going to read it all. There's a couple of kind of things that I would highlight in there as well, but obviously that's the kind of the letter from it as well. Do you know what I mean? Just effectively saying thank you for the support. Thank you for always being at the club. whether at home or away, the support has been unwavering. He said he's loved meeting the fans all over the world. That's what makes Man United fans so special. I'd like to thank you for supporting me. I would also like to thank the staff in all departments of the club for their unwavering support in good times and bad. We won 2 trophies, accomplishments I will cherish for the rest of my life. Of course, my dream was to fill the cabinet with more trophies. Unfortunately, that dream came to an end. I wish all Manchester United fans nothing but success and trophies. The support and kindness I receive from everyone has helped me feel at home. Thanks for this chapter, Erik ten Hag. So really kind of classy letter I felt there from Erik ten Hag. And it is sad. I've said this before. I think it's always sad when a manager loses his job. And it's weird with ten Hag because he is a manager that I really, really got behind and really wanted to back. I've always been of the opinion, though, that if you ten Hag out, you're right, and if you ten Hag in, you're right as well, because there's grounds for arguments both ways. Personally, I wanted to support him as much as physically as you physically can, because there have been external factors, in his time at United. But ultimately, I think there's the excuses for this season are just not there, and I can see why they've obviously taken the decision. Do you know what I mean? Just look at the league position, look at some of the performances this season, look at everything that's kind of going on. It's not been good this season. So but it is what it is. But he'll go on somewhere, no doubt, find another top club and continue to win trophies, because I do think he is a good manager. I just think that it kind of went a little bit wrong at United towards the end, and sometimes you just can't turn that around once you're on that run and you're on that kind of rot. It's very difficult to come out, because but then also I do think Ineos have a little bit to kind of blame on it as well, because the fact that they were openly talking to other managers in the summer, and obviously all the stories around sacking him after the FA Cup final and stuff, I don't think help. I do think that diminished his kind of power, and gave the players an excuse to kind of either not listen to him or whether it was the vice versa. Obviously, we'll know in the future what kind of actually did happen and what went down behind the scenes. But yeah, wish him all the best. I thought it was a nice letter for the fans. So, but let me know what you think about everything. Let me know what you think about Amorim. Are you excited? Are you kind of backing him? Let me know what you think about Gyökeres potentially coming in the summer, and all the other stories discussed in today's video, because that is you all up to date with the latest news and transfer news. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.